a confession that I made, I wanted very much, I hope I don't get sentimental about this, but I want to dedicate this reading to Doug Thayer. And I wanted very much the first time, I don't know if many of you know Doug Thayer, but he was a wonderful creative writing teacher here, a short story teacher. I never actually took a class from Doug on writing, but I read, well, let me tell you, the first time I saw Doug Thayer, he was wearing a blue suit with a vest, and I thought, that's what a writer is. And so I was trying to, I have a blue suit with a vest, but I couldn't get the vest closed. So I was going to wear that today, just out of respect for Doug. He was a wonderful, wonderful writer, and I first read Under the Cottonwoods, and then I knew that a writer was a lot more than a blue suit. He was somebody who could write sentences. So what I'm going to try today, this will probably, I would guess, maybe be my last reading ever, anywhere. And the first reading I ever did was here at BYU 100 years ago. And I did it as I was leaving, and they asked me to talk about my writing. And so I thought the best way to do that was to provide some illustrations. So I'm going to read from various, I'm not going to just read a short story, which is what I've done for about 30 or 40 years on different readings. Instead, I'm going to read to you from various books, little pieces, and for the first time in my life, I've started writing some creative nonfiction, although it's not very creative, it's just nonfiction. One of them grew out of a student, first time, it was funny, I've been teaching for something like 40 or 45 years, and a student finally asked me, why fiction? Why do you write fiction? And I had never thought about that. I don't know why. You think you would. You dedicate your life to it. And so I decided to write an essay about it. But I'm going to start with a little short, a little piece of what they call sudden fiction. One writer in a book called Sudden Fiction described this as like eating M&Ms. So let's see how it goes. It's a little short story, little sudden fiction, and it's called My Home State of Nevada. My home state of Nevada. She put the door in my face. I was coming in and she was coming out. The door was glass. She said, thank you, but she had done the work. The birthmark on her neck looked like my home state of Nevada. So I followed. I galloped. I said, V. Gates. She studied the sidewalk, me and my chutzpah, the jaybird blue sky, the oleanders behind us. She said, Très bien, and an orange cat slinked by. I thought, a multilingual family. I could have said, and if I had, she'd have raised a curtain of anger. I said, I'm hungry. Lunch? We ate. We had children. They spoke Chinese, Portuguese, Pontiac, French, Russian, and German. They went away and they became Mormons. With each birth, her birthmark diminished until it was the red dot the shape of Lake Mead. She had it lasered, and one day it wasn't there. Layer by layer, I undid the bed. I combed the furrowed ground of the garden she had worked row by row. I flashlight swept the shag carpet square foot by square foot, noodle by noodle. What was gone was lost. My home state of Nevada had a run of luck. Mount Odie rained silver ore over Tonopah. The sagebrush gave way, and coats of grass rolled in. The rivers gained depth and width, and every Christmas, snow fell on Las Vegas, my hometown. We moved to Sparks, near enough to Reno, and burned our bridges and rode taxis. Money was no object. Her hair left and right from apart down the middle. We got on. We did. The lean years came, as they do, and we sat in Windsor chairs and looked fixedly at the blue mountains and the dirt, or we quarreled. Too often it was me first, first thing in the morning. Our oldest became a prophet. We saw him on TV. His lips were wet and he looked benign. We zigzagged across the Great Basin without telling anyone when we expected to return, not because we felt like tin gods or back-talking kids. We showed our respect. We didn't skimp on water. We kept our clothes on, and we did not put our feet or hands in places we couldn't see. Once she did sit down without looking, and I prepared myself to suck venom from her wounds wherever they might be. We found a cave in Montana where you sit and absorb radon gas. We paid to get in, and we sat and played hearts. There had been published disagreement. The scientists said we would die. The locals said we would be cured. She said, "In whom should we trust?" And the sun smacked us as we emerged. Okay, that's a little Eminem for you, okay? Now this is a little of my nonfiction, which I think explains why I write fiction, but let's give it a chance and see what you think. I can't dance. Man, did I want to. But you have to imagine a cardboard box on a dance floor. Do I still? Yeah, ballroom. Yet there are my two left feet, and worse, imagine them in patent leather and black. I would kill to be able to sing and reconfigure the world the way song can, but my voice is plug ugly. I'm learning the saxophone, and I play it like it's a sock, yet I persist. The woman who teaches me calls me an old vessel, and then she sighs. In my mind, my saxophone in my hands, I'm Coltrane and Charlie Parker and Hawkins. But the truth is, I can't blow. The other day, I was driving towards Las Vegas to play golf with some friends. I listened to CDs. I put in Coltrane, and I had to pull over and just listen. God, but I want to jam. In answer to an interviewer's question, which was, does music give hope? Barry Hannah says, right, it gives hope. That's why I love to hear the stories about people in down and out circumstances, like Tom Waits, who really had a kind of ugly voice to give, but who is just wonderful. And Dylan, who can't sing, but he had the desperation of not being able to sing, which is better than, say, Glenn Campbell, who can sing. We writers know, all of us, we have, this is Barry Hannah continued, we writers know, all of us who have an ear, that we cannot teach music. The people who touch music. The people who try to duplicate it on the page, idiocy. Edgar Allan Poe, his worst experiments, to try to be bells. Although he was the most musical, the French do adore him because he was pure music. You aspire to that condition. I suffer the desperation that Barry Hannah suffers, the aspiration to write. And I believe with Hannah that I cannot touch music, not on the page. But I want to earn the reaction that music does, that singing raises like rain on a sidewalk in the winter. I suffer from desire, from want, from Dillard's desperation. I want to write a story like Fritz Scholder, say Self-Portrait with a gray cat. Foreground, blue, gray, purplish, and lavender, that is not a cat, but is instead a color no one else has ever mixed or applied in the way that Scholder has, and that is the shape like one of those smudges you see on the foreheads of Catholics on Ash Wednesday. Shoulder disappears into the background except for a sallow, fleshy, sockless ankle. His shallow, fleshy, sockless ankles in contrast to his black loafers. Savion Glover, the tapper, the hoofer, says of another tapper, hooper, hooker, hoofer. Baby Lawrence, he says of Baby Lawrence, he kept his dancing on the floor. I want to write fiction like that. I think of three young ladies, Avery May, Lila Ray, and Presley J. These are my granddaughters, and I have only met and held Avery in my arms. I have this rather gruesome fantasy that I am dead, and the three of them, chumming around one night with Nora Jones's daughter, I don't even know if she has one, they come upon my skull. The wind is blowing. It is, however, not a warm Mediterranean wind like the Levant in Philip Levine's poem, Dust and Memory. Levine writes, "The wind, the Levant, will howl through the sockets of my skull to make a peculiar music. When you hear it, remember it's me, singing, gone but here, warm still in the fire of your cave." The wind that I think of, though, in my dream or in my fantasy, whatever it is the stiff, cold wind that occasionally blows in Las Vegas, off the Las Vegas desert, and blasts my hometown of Las Vegas. The peculiar music that he talks about is mine. It is me. It is, I hope, idiosyncratic to me. Avery, Lila, Presley, please to keep my music warm in the fire of your caves. There is a soundtrack that accompanies this adventure, this dream that I have. Nora Jones is singing a duet with Willie Nelson. Piano key over key, singular notes, and a brush of the drums. Nora, I can't stay. Willie, baby, it's cold outside. Nora, I've got to go away. Willie, but baby, it's cold outside. Which of course is every story that's ever been written since the beginning of time. Everyone dies, Springsteen tells us. Baby, that's a fact. But maybe everything that dies someday comes back. Put your makeup on and mix your hair up pretty and meet me tonight in Atlantic City. I had to go. I'm 71 and it's time for an accounting. I won't be back. Please, in your fires, please to keep my words warm. So I write fiction. I hope that explains something. I'm not sure what it does explain, but something. I thought I'd give you a couple of examples of what I try to do in fiction, what I'm trying to keep alive. This is from a book of mine called Bring Your Legs With You. It's about a boxer. It's a collection of stories that forms a novel, but it's really just a collection of stories. The first story is called Bring Your Legs With You. My brain is not wired for chess. So the Tuesdays, me and my dad Gus got together, he punked me good, game after game. One move at a time, he told me, don't be counting your chickens. All that talk about calculating 10, 15 plays ahead, Gus declared it crap. Be his guest, you're such a pistol. You're such a genius, you can calculate infinity, because that's the number of plays is possible. It ain't like making donuts. Go ahead, Ace, he said to me. Tell me where I'll be one day, one play from now. Trouble was, I bogged down on the board, and he took me apart. Tonight, he cooked linguine and tossed a 7-layer mile-high salad. He baked breads, poured wine, a port, and me and Gus, the two of us in front of the TV, we cheered on the Utah Jazz, loving their game, the many ways they embarrassed the showboating Lakers. All the time Gus talking about the years he was acquainted with the mobsters who ran Las Vegas when Grandpa Jersey owned one mortuary rather than the 20 that Gus now lets run themselves. Story I hadn't heard before was how Grandpa Jersey chewed cigarettes when the cops brought in a body they found in the desert, one that had been stewing there for a week or two in a shallow grave. Tobacco killed the stench, allowed him to breathe. Grandpa Jersey laid out the problem for an air conditioning guy named Phillips, who designed a system that pulled fresh air down across the body and out of the room. Phillips got rich. Grandpa Jersey caught his coattails and bought land cheap out near Red Rock and along Paradise Road, turned nickels into gold. It's a story about a fighter who is trying to make a comeback that runs through the entire novel. I guess it's not a novel, it's a novel in stories. Again, something that I'm trying to do that I hope the granddaughters will keep alive somehow. This is from a novel which is called 1 Mile Past Dangerous Curve. I wanted to title it 1 More Mile Past Dangerous Curves, but the editors wouldn't let me, and I still don't know why. I like that a lot better, but I don't know. This is about a sign painter, which is something that I did for about 7 years in Las Vegas, who goes to Ohio. And like I was in Ohio for almost 20 years, he was lost every single day. And so it's kind of about his life. Springtime in Ohio. Forsythia in bloom, a range of yellow Eddie had not seen except in photographs, buttercup to pot of gold, daffodils out, urgent and glad-handing, trees, bushes, shrubs, and lawns, 37 different shades of green, tulips in the flower beds the city maintained in intersections, the streets gowned and ready for ballroom dancing, purple here and there like corsages, splotches of red and orange foliage, neon pinks, the purples full of greeting card blue jays, woody woodpeckers hammering tree trunks, song sparrows chipping in, all of it a pretty to buttonhole you and make you lightheaded and inexact. You can imagine that where that came from since I grew up in Las Vegas. So it was a kind of a shock for me. I describe it later in the novel as it's like living in somebody's hair. It was really, I really, 20 years, I never did figure out north, south, east, and west. I just kept driving. And I met a guy out in the woods one time and told him where I was going, and he said, just keep turning left. So I did, and I got there. So Eddie was 2,000 miles from his hometown, from Las Vegas, from the clarity of the desert and its thin air, from his daughter Maggie, from Patty, his ex-wife. Southeast Ohio, unglaciated, the hindside of the Appalachians, throwback country, 5 or 6 letters gone missing from the alphabet here. A place called Athens, 200 years in the making, and the clay underneath still on the move, shifting in slow motion and toppling retaining walls when no one else was looking. Just another little side note, we lived on a hill there. I used to lie in bed at night, and underneath our house, there were braces, steel braces holding it up, and you'd be lying there at night and you could hear them topple from the clay moving, so they'd fall down, and I'd have to go down in the morning and put them back up and tighten them down. So it's kind of an uneasy feeling. I grew up in Las Vegas on a street called Ogden Street, and I didn't know this, but the guy who lived next door to us was a hitman for the mafia. Played with his kids and all that stuff. And I never thought I'd do it, but I decided to write a story about a hitman. So I brought him to Ohio, I don't think his profession has much to do with the story, but anyway. This is called Can I Help? Who's Next? I asked the subway girl if she could change those gloves they wear. Could she, I wondered out loud, pull on a fresh pair? I put a grin in my question. The guy before me had ordered turkey. To my way of thinking, you didn't handle turkey. To my way of thinking, you handled turkey. You didn't then build a veggie sandwich for the next customer before you washed your hands and put on new gloves. I was taking her at her word. She wondered if she could help me. I wondered if she really meant what she said. Can I help? Who's next? Meat is meat. We're talking toxins. Also, it wasn't up to me to explain her job to her. The gloves, you know this, if you check out the box there on the counter, they're polyethylene. What can they cost? A penny a pair? A nickel? Tops? As cheap as chopsticks in China. You're a kid. You don't entirely believe in consequences. The brains of youth has a way to go yet. But excuses don't mitigate the pesticide residue you find in your fast food. What I actually said about the gloves was, I would appreciate your doing so. I offered up a shrug, my apology, and that grin, which you might have described as sheepish. Shakespeare, right? We're all a bunch of thespians. She accommodated me, but pouty. There on her face, unhappiness. And she made a show of jerking the fresh gloves from their box and yanking them on. Okay, that's a little bit of what I'm trying to do in fiction. Now a kind of a memoir that I'm writing, and see what you think. It's about, I grew up in Las Vegas playing golf, and then when I turned 19, I don't think I played again. I figured it out, it's pretty close to 46 years. And I played once during that 46 years, and then I came back to it. And so I decided to write a book about it. It's called The Years I Putted Out. And I set a goal in mind of playing again in the Huntsman Senior Games. And I thought I'd write this funny book, but it turned really dark. I mean, extremely dark and depressing. Anyway, here's a little bit of it. The Year I Put It Out. First chapter is titled Listen. The first word of Miles Davis's prologue to his autobiography is listen. It sits alone as a paragraph, and it is, as it stands in its singularity, its own riff. Listen is an imperative, a sound, an exhortation, a request, a provocation, a wake-up call, a tension getter, a heads up, that is, snap out of it, a prayer, one angel's lamentations while that angel dances on the head of one pin, a bargaining chip, a warning. It is also what Davis's horn insists on when he plays. Listen. So it goes for a few pages and then turns into kind of a personal essay. My wife, Kate, and I, and our cocker, Walter, have moved from Athens, Ohio to St. George, Utah. I'm sitting at a table in the Pier 49 on Bluff Street, and I'm waiting on a single-serving sourdough pizza cake called in for me. It's takeout. She's waiting in the car, Walter in the back seat, engine running, the air conditioning on high. The pizza will be 5 minutes yet. No other customers are here. At the far end of the cafe, past a row of booths, bolted high up on the wall, is a flat-screen TV. They're broadcasting a college softball game, women's, Penn versus Arizona, I think, probably part of the NCAA tournament. The score is 0-0. Truth is, I'm only guessing. I can no longer read the small print on the documents or on TVs, and I can't honestly read the score from where I'm sitting. It could be 6-0, or 6-8, or 9 to something. When it comes down to it, who cares whether Penn is winning or Arizona is winning? Looking in the mirror to shave is not all that unpleasant when you can't see clearly anymore. On TV, the pitcher rocks on the rubber, her grip on the ball, curve, slider, changeup, hidden in her glove. She pumps, orchestrates a knee-deep dip, windmills her right arm, and flies to pieces. Is a firecracker whose fuse has been lit and burned down. Sparks fly from her, and the ball rockets toward home plate. The event is theater. Her delivery is fierce, and it is comic, and it has the desperation and passion of tragedy, of a fury who has been cut loose, of a murder. All that jumping up and down at the center of things. There is trespass in her efforts. Her left arm flung sharply to her left, she is a righty, shoots out 8 or 9 feet and then spikes the air. Her hair explodes like a head of a matchstick, as if the goddess of softball has flicked it and enlivened the tip with her thumbnail. An explosion of sulfur and phosphorus in the air. The pitch squirts outside and low. The camera settles on the woman's face, and she resettles on the mound. It's like watching a film rewind. Someone has pushed reset, reboot. Her jersey is red, her shorts white, and her black socks reach to her knees. She checks the catcher for a signal. She wears a white headband, and her ponytail loops down her back. From under one eye, half circling her cheek, is red paint. Pitch after pitch, this is a battle. She recalculates, nods, rocks, windmills her arms, lights herself up and delivers a strike. She fires, then she resets. She fires, then she resets. The violence of her pitching seems somehow to be against the laws of nature. How long can she keep going like this? The batter finally hits a grounder up the middle. The pitcher used, in 1 second, the energy I would burn for the next year and a half of my life. I couldn't pitch overhand, underhand, softball, or hardball at this point. I once did. I played third, not a great arm, but adequate. Now if I sneeze too hard, my right elbow hurts. Out of the blue, either knee can take me to the ground. I have the x-rays. I sit in this Pier 1 and can't raise my right arm above my shoulder. I played 9 holes earlier today and I'm wearing a Tommy copper sleeve. It's blue. I think it helps, but it's probably a placebo. I am all the wear and tear that comes with age. I have a pen, and there is a napkin dispenser. If I could draw what I'm seeing on the TV, if I could draw the event, maybe I could suck up its energy. I watched the woman pitch. I can't imagine being that young. Being unto yourself in such magnificence in the effort to accomplish your task. You have to be have that kind of perversity and expansiveness. You're 18, you're 19, and maybe you're in college, and the day is whatever it is, stormy, sunny, off and on both, and you've got no quarrel with it. You're 40, 50, and you go to a family function. All the youngsters are present, the nephews, the nieces, the kids with their kids. Smiles are omnipresent, and the teeth so exhilaratingly white. You once had white teeth, your former self. Oi. Such longing. That's the feeling I get watching the young woman from Penn State hurl balls and strikes here in Pier 59 on Bluff Street in St. George, Utah. One morning after a jog from Marina del Rey to the Santa Monica Pier, I took off my socks and shoes, piled them on the sand, and walked across the beach to the Pacific Ocean. Above me, on another pier, there were 50 or 60 fishermen huddled in and over their rods. I walked into the water and I kept walking. Why not? All the way to China, or more pleasantly, all the way to Hawaii. I reached the point where I could touch or not touch the bottom. It was sink or swim time. I stepped back a few feet, the water to my chin, and I thought, how did I get here from there? From the knockabout kid growing up in Las Vegas to this moment. I couldn't produce the pitcher's energy even if I were just readying myself to die. No more sprinting, no more jogging. My daily jogging is an embarrassment. One day, a lady out walking watched me chug by and around a corner, and she yelled out, "I used to run." So I yelled back, "So did I." And I plowed on. There is no more sliding into bases, no more trusting a teammate's pick and then rolling to the hoop. I do run, okay, jog, okay, trudge. I can make 25 minutes a day, that's the limit. I take Sundays off. Is that running? I don't know. But golf, I have plans. There are the senior tees. There are the ladies' tees. There are handicaps. There are the Huntsman World Senior Games. This is the year that I put out. So that's my attempt at nonfiction. I never, for 40 years, never could write nonfiction because after 2 sentences I started lying, and it turned into fiction very, very quickly. One more sudden fiction and I'll be done, all right? This is called They Could Smell Texas. He drove taxi like he was born to it. You could see she had money by how she sat on her luggage. "Texas," she said, and quick. She stood, allowing him access to her bag, and he said, "Lady?" Whose tone meant, "Give me a break. Enough with the jokes." They both looked around. Times Square, New York, New York. He was nobody's straight man. Her name was Margot. His name was Albert. Pennsylvania, that thumb-sucking, headstrong, and truculent state, opened their eyes. Ohio, being what it is, that badge of a state, the heart of it all, was where they both had family who put together a wedding. Her 93-year-old Mima and Papa appeared. The Home Remedy Stream Band performed. Jigs, breakdowns, hornpipes, Billy and the Low Ground, Red-Haired Boy, Honeysuckle Rag, and then a waltz. There was a banjo and a fiddle act, a him and a her sitting like yard art and strumming, him saying, "The cow's got out and is down the road." Her saying, turn the cow." Him saying, "Cow's already outside in." Cardboard fish cut out and brightly finger-painted by kindergartners hung from the ceiling and floated and spun like a mobile. Written on each one, "Save water. It may be gone sooner than you think." A potbelly stove heated the room. A remnant from the 60s, hair like forgotten promise and fluffier on one side than the other side, played the dulcimer. Their one and only child was a girl, gifted with Margot's eyes, Margot's ears, Margot's feet, the color and the smooth of pears. The other side of the coin was that the poor thing got Albert's lower lip, pouty and configured for cigarettes, cupped. From the two of them, a brain busy as an ant farm. They named her Margaret. Off she went to MIT. Tennessee, Margot and Albert clung to each other, cupidity in one hand. Oklahoma, and he got Parkinson's, and they found Jesus under a high tent. Money changed hands, and Albert set out to recoup. He needed just 5 minutes. So close, yet so far, they could smell Texas. The daughter telephoned, had a cure, she claimed, a byproduct of her work in pre-med. She was FedExing it to them. Stick close to the house. Help's on the way. The answer is in the bag. Not a problem, Albert said. Legs don't work anyway. Margot sat by him exactly the way she sat on her suitcase all those states ago. 2 days passed. 3, 5. Was their daughter capable of such a cruel hoax? Was it a joke? Was it supposed to be funny? The mother of all betrayals? The daughter of all betrayals? Wind came up. Texas smelled like engine oil. They located an old highway, settled themselves in a yellow cab, and she drove the pair of them toward the Panhandle. There was a small sign, "Welcome to Texas," bullet-riddled, shot up. It was, boredom being what it is, how it can get a grip and help the mind feed itself. Holes like nips in a tin sky. A .22 looked like. Angst circled overhead. Margot helped Albert out of the taxi, dragged her one piece of luggage to a spot, smack dab center in the 2-lane. The two of them sat on it together. A semi was pushing south out of Oklahoma. A semi was pushing north out of Texas. Drivers laying on the lanyard, yahooing in their private worlds. They had no business hauling their freight on the back roads. It was against the law. To do so was forbidden. She wasn't about to budge, and his legs, they had quit on Albert altogether. Thank you. Michael said you might have some questions. I said I'd ring long enough that I wouldn't allow you any questions. Yeah.
Years ago, you wrote an essay or started a book.
No, I didn't.
Aphasia as a metaphor for writing. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Wow. Yeah, that's a great question. I just think there has to be. I think that between your sentences, it has to feel as if you're suffering from aphasia. Between sentences, like.
Tell us what aphasia is.
In my metaphor.
Sure. What it is literally.
What it is literally. In my way of thinking, in my metaphor, it is the. I'll just relate it to writing. It is putting on you the responsibility of making the relationship between two sentences. That it feels like I've forgotten my train of thought, or that I've gone in the wrong direction. I'm not a scholar of any kind at all, but I like to read Derrida and understand like 2 pages out of a 500-page book. But he has a word called disinerance, which he translates, or not translates, but discusses as a wandering, so that you have a destination or a destiny and a goal to achieve. And language, he argues, will always wander away from that no matter how much you try to wrangle it. And so that's the way I think of it, as that I will write sentences that are disturbing enough that they seem to be wandering, and you as the reader have to wrangle them back into place. Does that make sense at all? I don't think I wrote that essay either. So. Yeah. Anybody else? Yeah, Chris.
What advice do you have for writing inspiring fiction?
Should I give them the same advice that I gave to this young lady who interviewed me this morning? I've reached the point that I'm going to misquote Gordon Lish here because I can't remember exactly the word he uses. But I've reached the point that I look back over 40, 45 years of teaching, and I could probably name on one hand or two hands the number of writers that I've taught who have succeeded and continue to write and who are publishing books. And on another level, about 3, 400 who were really gifted and talented, and I would have killed for their talent. I would have done anything to have their talent. I would have done anything to write the way they wrote, and with such skill and with such intelligence. And I've never heard from them again, and they've never published. They've never gone on. So my advice would be persist. I think that's Gordon Word's word, but I'm not sure that it is. Order, I think, maybe his word, but just go. If you want to do it, you have to just do it. And every single day, put yourself in front of something and write, even if it's just a deliberate exercise. And you cannot let the world discourage you, because it seems that it's out to do that. But I would just say, keep doing it, do it. It makes me, at this point in my life, it makes me really sad to think, I can picture them, I can see their faces, these talented writers who just didn't do it. They didn't go on, they didn't keep writing. They let one rejection stop them or something like that. Does that answer that at all? Anybody, anything else? Yeah.
Some people who are writing fiction think that they do all the research in their own heads. I'm wondering if you could give us anecdotes about some of the different kinds of research.
Oh, yeah. I also in that interview this morning talked about the fact that I don't really, that I write from sentence to sentence. So like that story about the hitman, it started when I was actually in a subway, and the woman said, "Could I help? Who's next?" And I just went home and wrote that down, and then wrote the next sentence and the next sentence. It's a really long, slow process for me. The research, I get 3, maybe 6, 7 drafts in. I finally figure out what the story's about. And I once wrote a story called Bobby Got Her Stomach Stapled. And I just heard that at a family thing. And I didn't know anything about that, so I went to 5 different dentists and learned how to staple, not dentists, I'm sorry, the doctors. I actually did go to dentist for the same story, because then she had her jaw wired shut, so I went to dentist and learned how to do that. And I could do yours if you'd like. I think I still remember how to do it. But so at that point I start doing some research, and I try to keep Richard Russo's advice in mind, which is don't let it show as research. Is that's no, I just had it. No, I'm not that. I'm not Stephen Crane. I don't stand in, lunch lines for food. No, I just watched. Yeah. Anything else? Yeah.
I've heard a lot of people say, giving writing advice, write what you know. And I really admire how you put in your background in Las Vegas. How do you go about writing what you know?
Yeah. Again, our interview. I had a really, really good friend of mine, and I was trying to tell her how I write from sentence to sentence. And I said, everything's just, I'm not an experimental writer, I'm a realist. And I said, I just write a sentence and I write the next one, and I read those 2 and I write the next one, read those 3 and write the next one. And I try to do it without thinking. But she said, "You're lying to me." And I said, "Oh?" And she said, "Let's go through your story." We went through my story, and she showed me where every one of my sentences came from. And I could go through that story and tell you, oh yeah, this was my friend in Las Vegas, oh this happened in Ohio, and I can show you where every one of them came from. So I don't know how you can write not what you know. Does that make sense? I could go through all of these books and I can tell you where every single sentence, if I think about it, I can tell you where every single sentence came from. I don't have any imagination whatsoever. It's zero on the scale of the 0 to 100. It's zero, and so I can trace everything back to something that somebody said or did. I'm working on a novel right now, and I'm so surprised to find out I've got scenes in there that I did not live, never have lived, but I lived those sentences. Does that make sense? Does that help at all? Anything else? I really do feel like apologizing. I've never done a reading like that before. I thought it might be a good way to end my career, is to say this is what I do and this is why I do it, and then to bring in some of the things that I'm doing now, which is nonfiction, which those are actually big lies. Those I mean, I started lying, I don't know where, somewhere in there, and they're really fiction, I guess. So I'll apologize for that. Nothing else? Okay, well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thanks.